No wonder the blankets on top of everything. They're both covered up. That's probably why it wasn't working.
Ah,
You be good, Lou.
as usual, we're giving a few minutes to let everyone get joined in on the meeting. Thank you all for joining us. We're already up to 42 non-panelists here, which is wonderful to see. We'll give it another minute or two. All right, we've stayed pretty steady for a little while. So I am once again without my gavel, but I now declare open this special business meeting of the South Whidbey School Board. Call this meeting to order. We will begin with the land acknowledgement. Marnie, if you could.
Thank you, Brooke. South Whidbey School District would like to begin by acknowledging that we gather on the ancestral homelands, originally known as Chocoliche in the Shutside, of the coastal Salish peoples, on the lands of the Lower Skagit, Tulalip, Swinomish, Stillaguamish, and Suquamish, who have lived in the Salish Sea Basin since time immemorial, and have hunted, fished, and gathered, and have taken care of these lands. We respect their sovereignty and their right to self-determination, and we honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and with the water. Please join us in expressing our deepest respect and gratitude to the Indigenous people of this territory for their enduring care and protection of the land, which we currently occupy and share through the Treaty of Point Elliott, signed by 82 tribes in Mukilteo on January 22nd, 1855.
Thank you. Just a note that this meeting will actually have three parts to it. We're beginning with a special business meeting just to cover two quick approval votes on whether or not to approve two projects. We will then adjourn the special business meeting and go into a workshop. And after that, we will adjourn the workshop and go into a executive session in regards to negotiations that should take no longer than 45 minutes. So we will move on then to new business. Our first action item is memorandum 2021-22-01, approval of the elementary school portable re-roof project. Do I hear a motion on this item?
Move to approve.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion to be had on this?
Just out of curiosity, what were we storing in there before? I'm trying to remember.
Well, at one time, special education classes were held in there prior to storing it. It's had several uses over the years. But it's currently being used for materials for the elementary school.
Any other comments, questions? It seems to me like when you need to do a re-roof, you need to do a re-roof. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, Brooke, I'll just add, I did the same on my home this year, and it's a big expense with a big payback, big return in longevity of the structure.
One of those portables recently, Brooke, we actually raised, if I remember right. Joe
That's
shaking
correct.
her head.
Yeah, that one was unsavable. This
Yeah.
one is accessed often. Those materials are used by the elementary school, so.
And so we don't want to have to raise this one. So yes. And if there is no other questions or comments, all those in favor of memorandum 2021 or 2122-01, approval of the elementary school portable re-roof project, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Memorandum 2122-01, approval of the elementary school portable re-roof project has been approved. We'll move on to memorandum 2122-02, approval of the high school fast pitch field irrigation installation. Do I have a motion in regards to this memorandum?
Move to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or questions to be had? I just wanted to check in and ask how this compares to what we have on our baseball field.
It actually brings the softball or fast pitch field up to almost an equal level in terms of its irrigation. The baseball field has had irrigation, the softball field has not. We are dealing with a field in the state of disrepair right now, so we're bringing it up to speed with irrigation. We have folks volunteering to spend some time out there, softball players and their families. So plus our grounds folks are spending time out there to get it ready for play in the spring. It's a newer system. The baseball field's irrigation system's been in for quite some time, but it's kept up to date. So that's what I know about that right now.
Well, and good that we're getting them on the same on par, because that's a legal requirement as I understand it. So
You
know, very-
excellent.
Yes.
I'll ask a question that might be, you probably don't have the answer. Maybe you, I don't even know if anyone's thought of this or not. It just popped in my head right now. And that is going back to 2007 and 8 when they did the whole entire facilities report in preparation of doing the closure of Langley Middle School. It said that our stormwater drainage pond there, I think that was actually like on page 509 of that report, was overflowing. And I can't remember if we'd done anything with that stormwater drainage pond, but what just dawned on me is there a way to reclaim that water to use for irrigating any of our fields?
I don't have an answer to that.
I didn't think you would, but I was just,
Into it.
like I said, it just popped into my head right now, you know, I
It
mean.
popped into your head that page 509 is where it was.
Well, no, that's that investigative stuff that when I get into that, you know, I just have that memory that just jumps out at me. I can read it on the page.
Yeah,
So,
I will ask JJ. I know retention pond work is something that he's doing. I'm not sure if Dan has any further information on it, but we'll look into whether or not it can be reused.
Yeah, I would recommend doing a little research around opportunities to save water, you know, as a precious resource. And I believe that, you know, Title IX does require us, and we are responsible for providing a suitable athletic field for our softball students. So I would recommend that we both move forward with this irrigation plan and try to make long-term plans around responsibly irrigating.
Ann, anything to add?
No, thank you, Marnie, for that.
All right. It seems that there is no further comment or question. So all those in favor of Memorandum 2122-02, approval of the high school fast pitch field irrigation installation, please say aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Okay. Memorandum 2122-02, approval of the high school fast pitch field irrigation installation has been approved. I will now adjourn the special business meeting and we'll move on to the workshop format. As we get started with the workshop format, you may note for those watching at home that Director Andrea Downs is not with us at the moment. She has been called away by family business. She has formally asked for the board to excuse her absence from this workshop meeting. She has a family matter she needs to attend to. As she has formally requested for an excused absence, that requires the approval of the majority of the board. Do I
move
have
to
a motion?
approve her request for excused absence.
Thank you.
Second.
Is there any conversation or discussion to be had on that?
Yeah, I don't think it really becomes an issue until you have three business meetings in a row. Four business meetings, yeah,
Yep.
so.
So all those in favor of approving the excusing the absence, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Her absence has been excused. With the board workshop, I just want to remind people that we are in a board workshop, so we do encourage back and forth with the community who is participating from at home. We have 77 attendees at the moment. However, we are only engaging in discussion and taking comments on the items on the agenda. That's the difference between this and a business meeting. In business meetings, we take public comments on whatever topics the community wants to comment on, but we do not generally respond to them. Whereas in a workshop, we engage in back and forth as appropriate, but only on the specific topics that come up. So if you have something you would like to say, please use the Q&A function and include your name, first and last, and your location. And then the comment you want to make. Please make it a full comment rather than just I agree or I disagree, because it may be a little while before we get to reading them. So we won't be able to immediately, it won't make as much sense if you just say I agree, because we may have said some other stuff in the meantime. So please get a complete statement in there about what you're agreeing with, what suggestions or ideas you might have, that sort of thing. I will be dismissing things that do not apply to any of the items on the agenda. And I please request that if something like that happens, please come back at our next business meeting, which I believe is on the 22nd of September, and make your comment then. Okay, first of all, we're going to Dr. Moshe with a school opening and COVID update.
Thank you. I'm going to just ask Christy to unshare her screen so I can share mine. So I haven't changed my first slide except for the date, and That's because we are continuing to educate our young people in a pandemic. And so I wanted to update the board on the protocols we have in place, as well as where we are at this moment. As you know, we have a robust vision, mission, and values that we have been using to draft our goals and then approve our goals. And it helps us to move forward as a district. The board adopted 3 goals for the superintendent that essentially are the goals of the district. And we are using those as I work with the admin team and in turn teachers and staff. So just wanted to remind the board of the 3 goals that guide all of the work we do. The 2 major challenges, of course, that we face is keeping COVID out of school and improving teaching and learning for all in an effort to pursue equity of education for all. Essentially removing barriers that may be in the way for students as they pursue their education. So this moment, really pleased to tell you that it's been since last Wednesday, the 1st of September. So we've had 5 school days. We are following all of the required protocols. Our students and staff have really been 100% compliant. It's actually really exciting to be back in school with students and to see them as happy as they are. We've been able to go to lunch outside now that the weather is good, hoping to get some tents in place and use some covered areas as the rains come in. But we are doing everything we can to keep COVID out. We're doing on-site testing. We've sent many tests so far, and that is because of the Island County public health rules that are in place that I will get to. But essentially, any symptom requires a test in order for students to return to school. So we know it's allergy season and so on. And so these things continue on, but our nurses are doing a phenomenal job. Our staff our attendance folks, everyone that is working for the district is going above and beyond to make sure that we're as safe as possible. Really working to be compliant by October in terms of vaccination. We walked into the school year with 95% of our staff vaccinated, and we expect to be 100% compliant by the date set for us in October. Many students 12 and older eligible for the vaccine are receiving it. We encourage everyone eligible to get the vaccine. Certainly everyone in school is masked and distanced and following best practices. So really happy that we are having excellent compliance. For folks tuning in, any staff curious, we will be reporting any cases, positive cases on our dashboard on the website. We won't be sending out letters and so on. We will be notifying through contact tracing if necessary, but right now we have no known cases as of this afternoon. So this is the spreadsheet that we use. It may look a little complicated, but quite frankly, it isn't. This develops symptoms at school. And if you look down here at the bottom, any single symptom is a symptom. Fever, chills, cough, shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, fatigue, the common cold, right? A headache that causes you not to come to school, loss of taste, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. So essentially, we know, it's pretty clear that any illness is going to prompt a COVID test. We have them available on site with parent permission, of course. And we are moving to having rapid test as well as the one that takes time. The rapid test being, if it comes back negative, we know you're not contagious. And that's especially helpful for siblings of students who may be experiencing symptoms. So we're following this protocol. And this is on our website under the COVID toolkit. So if folks want to see it more clearly, they may. But this is what's guiding the work we're doing, and that's from Island County. Folks were very curious about what the disease rate is in our county. I'm happy to say, as you can see from this very far right, it's starting to decline again, but it peaked higher than it was back in April 2020, which we know was a high peak, and then April 2021, and it was even higher here. This is the age group 20 to 34-year-olds, this yellow line. They were the most impacted. 80 plus is very far down. We know that our vaccination rate in the county is close to 60% for fully vaccinated. And of course, we're hoping that that will go higher. In terms of our young people, this is a school age pullout of that same graph. So you can see that we definitely have students in our county who have been diagnosed with COVID, but we have not had a student attend school who has been diagnosed as of yet. And once again, our protocols are in place so that we keep COVID out of school and we don't have close contacts and we don't spread it in school. So in terms of school opening, again, very exciting first week, and we're spending all of our time with students on helping them readjust to full days of school in person. We're doing a lot of social emotional work, advisory, helping students with lunch logistics, because we want to make sure they have lots of space and that they get mask breaks and are outside for those mask breaks. And we're following all the COVID safety measures. Right now, our enrollment is as predicted in the budget. Dan and I will be doing a detailed enrollment discussion with you either at the next meeting or the first workshop in October, depending on if we can get an enrollment picture. Usually it's October 1st, so it may not be the end of September, it may be the beginning of October. And we'll talk with you about not only our own enrollment, but what we know about the schools around us, homeschooling, and students who've transferred. Right now, we have the numbers that you see here. We're still in flux at the 712 level. Lots of coming and going always at this time of year. So until the dust settles, this is our thumbnail sketch, but by no means is it finalized for the month of September. I wanted to share something that, as board members, I hope you're really, really proud of, because I am most certainly proud of this. Our school district has an amazing graduation rate. It's a very high graduation rate, which means our staff and faculty are working hard to get students who we know struggle at times. Some of our students struggle to meet performance benchmarks, but by the time they are ready to graduate, they are meeting those requirements. And having a graduation rate after 4 years of over 94%, and then by the time the 5th year is over, 97% of our students are graduated, that's a pretty remarkable trend, and we're really proud of it, and it's continued to go up over the years. In addition, typically every year we have almost 80% of our students attending education beyond high school or the military. There were very, very few students who don't have some kind of a direction when they leave us. So again, it's just a one piece of data, and you'll hear all about our school data at the October workshop when the principals present their school improvement plans. But just thought that was, I did a presentation for Rotary and they wanted to know the state of the district. And I put together this slide, and I thought it's really something to congratulate our staff on, because it's an amazing, it's amazing work that they do with our students. That's really what I have right now on the state of opening in the district, and I welcome the board's questions and comments. I'm going to stop the share so we can see each other a little bit better.
First of all, thank you very much for putting that together. Seeing all of the mitigation efforts that are going on and seeing them in action when I drop my daughter off to school is fantastic. I continue to be impressed how well the district is preparing ahead of time so that we can do this as safely as possible.
Thank you so much for the presentation. And I just want to share anecdotally that the students I've spoken with are having a really great year. They're feeling really welcomed and engaged and connected. And so in addition to these health measures, these mitigation efforts, there's also just a tremendous culture of welcome and celebrating every student and inviting them to show up to their fullest. So I think that any fears I may have had going in around whether these mitigation efforts would create greater discomfort in our schools, I'm seeing that the efforts to create greater comfort are far outweighing the inconvenience and frustration of having to go through these steps.
I have heard a little bit of anecdotal information from a few students that, they're still seeing, kind of clumping in lines and things like that. And I know that those things are really hard for people to get out of the habit of doing that. And so I'm wondering, just so I can assure those parents who I'm hearing from or those kids, is there extra attention being taken, like in classrooms, just to make sure desks stay 3 feet apart, and extra attention like at lunchtime, just make sure if the rule is 4 to a table, that kids are 4 to a table. I know that we don't have a lot of extra staff to do that, to spend their time doing that. But I'm just wondering what protocols there are if people kind of do see some clumping or something that might be a little bit out of, outside the protocol.
I think my best advice is to speak to an adult. We have a lot of adults around working to mitigate those instances of, and again, it's forgetfulness or innocence where people want to see each other, and especially outside. So we are reminding ourselves, reminding staff, again, all of the mitigation measures together make us as safe as possible. So yes, we are addressing those issues, and again, doing our best to keep COVID out. We also have opportunities to pivot if we have to, though we don't want to. Every teacher's using Google Classroom, making sure that they're maintaining connection as we go forward, establishing that students have equipment to be at home with, so that they can stay connected to their classroom. But thank you for that. And I appreciate the comment.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I think that can just make people feel really good to know that we're just all reminding each other. And, I know how kind and generous your staff is with their time. And so I know that we're all doing our best. So thank you.
I did have a question about the 80% with a plan afterwards. Does that include those who are going directly into apprenticeships or straight into the workforce also, or are they not caught up in that 80%?
They're actually beyond the 80%. 80% go off to a 2 or 4 year college. We do have students that actually push us quite close to almost every student going to trade school or the military. As I said, it's a handful of students who are struggling to find a direction.
You know me, that's one of my things is I want to make sure that we're pushing the value and importance of trade schools also. So I love to hear that those numbers go even above and beyond that 80%. Thank you. We do have some community comments. Damien, did you have anything to add at this point? Okay, then I will go on to some of these community questions and comments. Gwendy Hastings, Freeland. I hear the class sizes at the high school are over 17 students. I hear the classes K6 are 17-ish. Is this because older students are able to get vaccinated? I still think the upperclassmen need smaller classes for safety, especially now that we know that vaccinated people can get/spread it. I'll break there because there's a second question also.
So at this time, we have students 3 feet apart. The class sizes at the high school, they are higher than 17. It is pretty accurate that our average is somewhere, the range at the elementary is 17 to 19. We have smaller classes in some and a little bit bigger in others. The range is 17 to 24. But at the high school, that is correct. We have larger class sizes, but again, we're not sure where it's really going to shake out. They are at least 3 feet apart as required. Yes, it's true that they can get vaccinated, and yes, it's true that they can get it or spread it. We're doing everything we can to make sure students wear their masks and stay that 3 feet apart, and we continue to mitigate. So that's what we're doing at the upper levels.
And the second question, why are you allowing vaccinated students to remain in school after exposure? As I pointed out already, we know vaccinated people can get/spread it. I find that problematic and concerning, especially since our younger students are not able to be vaccinated yet. Per CDC, people need to quarantine until they get a negative test or stay quarantined for up to 2 weeks. It's better to be extra cautious, especially with our students.
Actually, if I could, I'm going to share the screen. This is directly from Island County. And we are following their protocol in terms of our nursing staff and what we're doing. So let me just grab that and I'll go back to it. So here's what the county is expecting. For one who is vaccinated, if it's close contact and one is vaccinated, this is close contact, not symptomatic. They may stay in school if they are vaccinated. If they are symptomatic, they are isolated, regardless of vaccination status, until they are tested. And then it says they isolate, they're sent home, testing is recommended, assuming parents say yes to testing. If it's positive, they cannot go to school. They have to isolate. That's whether or not they're vaccinated. So you can follow that protocol. But this over here is about close contact, not about symptomatic students. So we are not having vaccinated students in school if they are ill, but they can, students or staff, if they are vaccinated and they may have had a close contact, they may stay in school and then are tested 3 to 5 days after exposure. And so again, our nursing staff is in close contact with Island County Public Health, and we're following the protocols that are laid out for us.
I do very much understand that concern, especially since we know that vaccinated people often remain asymptomatic but can still spread it. So I do understand that concern, but I also understand the desire to limit disruption in the classes and the lower chance of transmission. Especially
We're not lessening the mitigation, right?
Right.
Everybody is socially distanced and wearing masks.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Tom Walker, Clinton, regarding COVID and masking, I like the stats so far and plan, and to continue building trust, I would recommend the board send an authorized representative to talk with all the pediatricians in the South Whidbey district. There aren't very many, asking them if they support the state mandate. If so, why? And if not, why not? And whether they have masking recommendations for certain health situations like children with asthma or autism. They're trained to support children's health. The purpose of this is local verification of a state health mandate and local input on health details rather than, for example, turning to various things on the internet. I know that our school nurses are in close contact with local medical professionals.
And both the school nurses and I meet directly with Island County Public Health and the Island County Public Health physician. So I am confident that we are getting direct information from people who are trained. Certainly, we can reach out to pediatricians. We've heard from our pediatricians. Again, the nurses have a very direct line to those individuals. So I feel confident that we are following the appropriate protocols.
Yeah, and even if the board were to direct someone to do that, I would absolutely want it to be the school nurses because they're our experts. So the fact that they are already in contact with them gives me great comfort there. Stephanie Hammer, resident of Coupeville. As a longtime educator, I want to congratulate the staff and teachers and students at South Whidbey for this truly impressive graduation rate. It's a fantastic outcome and really speaks to the quality and commitment of the educational opportunities offered. Thank you for your clear presentation, Board Member Joe Moshe. Superintendent Joe Moshe, but otherwise, absolutely, thank you. Gwendy Hastings Freeland, when will parents who are vaccinated be allowed to help in the classrooms?
Great question. We actually have a protocol for volunteers. They are required to be vaccinated, and as we get underway, individual buildings will have volunteers screened, just like they are now for background check, fingerprints, and added to that is you must be vaccinated. So that will come soon.
Yeah, I know that for my daughter's classes, they're talking a couple of weeks to let them get settled so the students are used to being in school without parents around. And I recognize that that's only for lower grades, but yeah, I'm anxious to help out too. Tyler Natras Langley. Our entire family support the mitigation and safety measures the school is already putting in place. I support the outside tents for lunchtime during the winter months. Thank you thank you for all your hard work. Thank you. Maureen Green Clinton, will there be fans allowed at the Falcons games?
At this time, there will be fans allowed at Falcon games. There are mitigation measures in place, and Mr. Lagerstad, Paul Lagerstad, our athletic director, is handling that. And certainly, if you have questions about that, you can reach out to him.
Sarah McDougall Freeland, thank you, board and superintendent, for your careful attention to keeping COVID out of school. I love hearing that the students are happy to be back in school and the protocols are working. And as parents can tell you, we're happy to have them back in school too. Dr. Moshe, Carrie Allen is one of our medical professionals.
Carrie Allen is yes, she is at the elementary school. She is a health provider for us. Yep.
And she says we are in constant contact with our local healthcare providers. They are a great asset. Thank you. Gwendy, I see your clarification there. Hopefully we got to your question and comment. Larry Christensen Freeland, what justification did the board use to cancel the in-person aspect of this workshop? Was it voted upon by the full board? That is outside the realms of the agenda, but I will answer that in this case because it is a topic of interest and importance to me as well. Seeing the continued spread of the continued high rates despite the recent lowering and the number of people we had in person at our board meetings and the lack of respect for the mask mandates that we saw from some individuals and the concerns that those of us who have unvaccinated family members at home had, we felt that since it was a requirement to have these meetings online, but not a requirement to have them in person at present, I made the decision to move it virtual only, as is part of my duties as board chair. And I did this with the advice from Dr. Moshe and the contacts with the health department that she has. Okay, are there any, let's see here. Okay, Stephen A. Schwartz Langley, I applaud the school system for the excellent completion rate among the students and also the careful work being done on vaccination rates and mitigation policies. I'm heartened that the board has not gotten lost in the massive disinformation circulating. Preston Osman Freeland, so grateful for your safe and reasoned approach to COVID-19 procedures. Thank you for all your hard work and dedication. Our community benefits immensely from our current school board. Let's see here. Amanda, since I brought it up, Amanda Murphy Clinton, parent, I very much appreciate the precaution of moving to Zoom and hope that it continues. Thanks. Joan Green Langley, parent of South Whidbey High School student. Thank you, Joe Moshe, for the informative presentation. It's great assurance that our children are in excellent hands. Our family fully supports all your COVID mandates of mask wearing, et cetera. Thank you again for all that you do. Okay, we've got a lot of things on the agenda, so I'm going to keep us moving along. Thank you again, Dr. Moshe, for the presentation. There is another important question here. Laura Rookstool Langley. If people can get it and spread it, well, why are we encouraging students and staff to get vaccinated? And I can address that. The severity of COVID-19, if you get it while vaccinated, is massively decreased. There is a much reduced possibility of serious symptoms, and even even more reduced possibility of death with COVID-19 if you are vaccinated. That's why we're encouraging it. And also because we are following a state mandate to have all of our staff vaccinated. Sarah Chappelle Freeland, so happy to hear a successful return to school with safety protocols working smoothly. I also support the return to online board meetings. We've got a couple more comments, or at least one more comment about online meetings, but I'm going to keep us moving along since that is not an agenda item. It was in favor of them also. Okay, we have 6 policies and we are without our policy person. So I'm going to do my best with Dr. Moshe's assistance to run us through these policies. Most of them are simple and straightforward updates from WASDA. So we're going to look first at policy 2108, Learning Assistance Program Updates. And this is, from what I understand, this is, and please Dr. Moshe, step in if I'm going wrong somewhere. This is mostly an update for, to make sure that we don't leave more students behind through the COVID-19 pandemic. It's updating these standards for specific items in regards to COVID-19 mitigation efforts and distance learning from last year.
That's correct. And we actually have, and Dan demonstrated it when we talked about the budget, we used the federal dollars to help with our program for students who need assistance to catch up because of our experience with COVID in the last 18 months.
Excellent. I'm doing my glance through on all of these for he, she, and for parents, and I didn't see any in this one. I did see a couple in other ones, which I'll bring up as we go to it. Are there any questions or comments from the board or the community on this? I'm seeing some shaking heads from board members. Okay, then we'll take a look at this and bring it up at the next business meeting for voting.
Hey, Brooke, just for full disclosure, just so you know, I'm looking at it on my phone so I can enlarge it and read it. It's a little bit hard on that screen, just an FYI for anybody who's curious what I'm doing.
Yeah, I actually have a second window open so I can look at it bigger also. I completely understand that. Okay, so the first policy. The second one is policy 2418, waiver of high school graduation credits. And this is just changing, adding some legal references and changing or adding one additional bullet point to the list. I did notice in the third paragraph there is a his, her that we should change to they. Where was it? Oh, where was that?
Christy has it highlighted there, Brooke, if you look.
Yeah.
It's the board delegates to the superintendent.
Yeah. Right.
And it should just take it out. It should be boards to the superintendent or designee. We don't need a pronoun at all.
Perfect. So yeah, we'll get that one done. Anything else from board or community members on this one? Okay, we'll move on to the next one, which is 2420, grading and progress reports. This is removing one section on paying for school property that has been lost or willfully damaged and adding an or designee for the superintendent. Reading in progress report. In the first and second paragraphs, I noticed parents, and we should get that to parents or guardians. And in the fifth paragraph, a his/her. Yeah. So just a couple of quick tweaks.
Did you
there.
say the first sentence of the second paragraph, parent or guardian? Is that what you're saying?
That's
Uh,
correct.
Yeah.
All right, want to make sure I heard it correctly.
Yeah. And Christy, I will send you my notes on these also so that we can get them updated, just where those things are. Yeah, this
That's
is
good. I'm taking notes too, so.
perfect. Again, if any community members, you can look at these on our agenda page in the meeting. If anyone has any comments on them also. We are taking comments on these policies in particular. Anything else? Okay. We can move on from that to 3122, excused and unexcused absences. This is adding verbiage for, it's changing some of the numbering and tweaking some of the numbers, community engagement board rather than community truancy board, changing fifth unexcused absence to seventh. A couple other numbers there, but not much else. I did notice a number of items in here that used parents, family member, child, where it should probably be student as it is in other parts of it. Parent and child, that sort of thing, but nothing in the actual policy itself stood out to me. And again, Christy, I'll get you a
Do
list
you
of
want to
those.
change child to something?
In the other parts of this policy and in the other policies, we say student.
Student, okay.
And I'd like to run that by Andrea, since she is the expert on this when she gets back, but that would be my preference.
Got it.
It would make it consistent because even within
Yep.
this policy, it says student in some places and child in others, so.
Yep.
So Dr. Mocha, I'm trying to remember on this, if this one's coming from WASDA or if this is the one that we had originally up, where we had the situation where we looked at, for example, where we're talking about here in the last paragraph, 5 absences in 1 month. Didn't we change that in one of our policies recently? Because you could have 4 in 1 month, like say October, and 4 in November, and you wouldn't have 5. And I thought that we made a correction to look at that in one of our updated policies a couple of years ago.
We did. Other than the 7th unexcused, this one is 7th unexcused absence within any month. And we had changed in another policy within any 4-week period. So we can certainly do that here to make it consistent.
Thank you, Damien. That sounds like a good idea to me. Because I get that if you're just looking at a calendar month, you could have a cluster of unexcused absences without.
And the interesting change here is that we have done a lot of work around helping students engage with school. This is far more about helping them come to school and what the barriers are to them coming to school rather than, filing for truancy and making it, punitive first. So it's really, and we have folks on staff who've worked with students through these attendance meetings to help students come to school and again, remove barriers that may be impeding that. So
thank you. Thank you, Brooke, because this is exactly one of those conversations personally you and I had
Mhm.
where, and this is one of the issues I brought up before, a couple years back. I don't remember when. That one doesn't stick out. Sorry, Dr. Joe. But the issue still does. But the concern is, like we're talking here, that WASDA, school districts don't report to WASDA their changes, so they get lost, like we're doing right now. And that was that conversation, if you recall that, Brooke, that I think it's a big thing to have WASDA start accepting changes from different school districts so that they start being able to advance their own policies based on what other school districts are doing at the local level.
Yeah, and thank you for that reminder as well, Damien. I'm just taking a note here right now to bring this back, to pass this back up to WASDA via email this week. So we can inform them of what the change that we've made and why we made it, and suggest that they look at it and see if they like it. And nothing may happen with that. And if I don't hear back from them, I'll poke them again.
Well, and you know what, just now that you're raising the issue, we should remind them that it should be parent guardian, and
Yes.
that the pronouns should be neutral.
Yep.
Agreed. And WASDA in their general session last fall did acknowledge the change of the pronouns on most of their things, but I don't know if they've actually actuated that yet. My only question, and I think it's great to check with Andrea, like you said, Brooke, is I wonder if doing a very close reading of this, if sometimes child means a minor youth, because I don't know what the language is around students who can manage their own affairs once they're 18. So that would be something to look at.
Excellent. So I will check with Andrea about child versus student. I'm
Thank you, Brooke.
taking notes here on the side. Let's see. Anything else on this one that anyone wants to bring up?
No. Thank you for mentioning the stuff about parent and guardian and about being really clear about those, because especially when it's a McKinney-Vento student or, you know, someone who has a similar challenge, guardian becomes that really important wording. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that's one of my pet projects as we go through all of these policies, is trying to comb out that language. All right. Next one along is 4311 School Safety and Security Services Program. This is a new policy, I believe, from WASDA. It did not have any specific language in there that we needed to scrub. I do need to note that we do not currently have a contract for a SRO, a school resource officer, and we currently have no plans to get one unless the board changes its mind on that. So a lot of this does not actually apply to our school.
Exactly. This, it's not relevant right now. I don't know if you want to, since it was recommended by WASDA as essential, I don't know if you feel that if the board feels it wants to implement it at this time, or just hold it in abeyance, since we don't have school resource officers. Of course, we have school safety plans, we have protocol, we talked about those protocols back in July, but we certainly don't have security officers.
Yeah. Thoughts on that?
I feel pretty strongly we could set this one aside in the holding area in abeyance. I don't feel like any of this, because I was looking at, you know, some of the intervention pieces and some of those pieces, but like you said, those are covered in other policies. And we have personnel on staff who are well-trained, well-versed in those policies and follow them and follow those procedures. And so I don't see that we need this extra layer because we don't have these extra personnel.
I would agree that the policies we already have in place do specify how the current staffing meets safety needs. and how the current staff configuration responds to arising safety issues. So I think that it would be at best a distraction and at worst a point of confusion to adopt a policy for which we don't have an applicable scenario.
I kind of see it a little bit differently because of the first paragraph. It simply states at the beginning of each school year, if the district has safety and security staff working on school property, the district must present to and discuss with students, blah, blah, blah. My point to that is that since we don't, it doesn't apply, but there's nothing wrong with having it there in case it gets bypassed if you ever do pick up a security officer or a contract with somebody. At least you'll know it's there. But I think the very first sentence even eliminates the fact that we don't have it, so it doesn't apply.
See that? Yeah, the only way I would want to hold it in abeyance is if we have it unofficially tagged that if alongside, and there's no real mechanism for that. Basically, the idea that if we do hire someone, we have to bring this up for a vote. But that would be relying on tribal knowledge, where there has to be someone in the organization who knows that we have this waiting in the wings if we do hire someone.
Right,
So
and that's exactly what I'm saying is that if it's part of our board policy, right, it's
Mhm.
already there if it ever did occur, and you can always change it and revamp it and look at it down the line. But if you set it aside forever, it could be lost forever, but this is just something to guide the school district in its initial phase if that ever did occur. It's just an insurance policy. That's how I kind of look at that. Doesn't mean it'll ever be used, but it's there if you need it.
I wonder if we might have a different policy on the books that's relevant, to which we might add a sentence that says, in the event that the district should employ safety and security staff, they shall be required to adopt a school safety and security services program policy.
just a second, let me see if we've got some policy on that. I'm just searching the website for security. I do understand the concern about adding a layer of unnecessary complication. So I'm sort of in between both of those two viewpoints. I see the concerns of each in this case.
And I would strongly encourage us to involve Andrea in a further discussion of this policy, because she has expertise that I lack on this particular topic.
Yeah, I would want to do a closer read of what all this says, because I did read it once, but I didn't do a very close read and edit. Because besides the normal edits that we do with pronouns and with parent guardian, things like that, I would really want to see what this says and what this would commit us to if we do put it in the books. I understand that we can just have it there as a placeholder, but in our current iteration of making sure that students feel safe at school and comfortable at school, I just would want to make sure we weren't adding unnecessary layers of this could come into play if these things happen. I just don't want to go down a slippery slope of, how much security do we need to keep our kids safe?
So Brooke, maybe we could just put it on the agenda for the next workshop to relook at it. Everybody will have actually a whole month to review it rather than a week.
That's exactly what I was going to suggest. Thank you, Damien.
And I would also, to Marnie's point, 4310 talks about the school district's relationship with law enforcement.
Mhm.
Might be that you can combine it there.
Yeah, basically take something in regards to that first sentence or first paragraph of this and just say, put it in 4310 that says, if we do bring on a SRO, we will implement policy in regards to X.
Yeah, because this is 4311, so I think they can go hand in hand rather than be separate if the board chose to.
Yeah, that sounds really reasonable to me, because I do hear, Damien, what you're saying, and Brooke, what you're saying about having that insurance policy, having that, and making sure that it's sitting there if in which we ever might need it. So I hear that as well. So I like having more time to mull it over and think it through and do a really close reading, and then also, see what it might look like if we pop parts of it onto 4310. So thank you.
Anything else on this one? Okay, let's move on to our last policy here, which is 5011, sexual harassment of district staff prohibited. It appears that there are just two changes. One is adding a note under which definitions, requirements, and procedures any complaint filed on behalf of a student against an employee will be handled under, and then updating when the superintendent's report to the board will be. Just
Just so you know, we actually had changed this. This is one that we changed to a report instead of an annual report. Now it looks like it's going to be changed back to an annual report. It's not required one way or the other. So it's really up to the board.
What do you think's better, Dr. Mocha, when it occurs, get a report, or just once a year?
Well, again, we have, if it occurs, we've reported to the board. But we certainly can do an annual report and say we've had no occurrences. It's just.
I'm curious, one of the truisms that I think you've shared, or I've heard us say, is one of our most precious resources is the superintendent's time. And I'm curious if there's a reason to make a report on this policy at intervals beyond what would be the approach for other policies of equal significance.
Well said. That's what I was trying to convey. Thank you. It's why are we looking at the efficacy of this policy on an annual basis any more than any other?
Yeah,
So.
Given the low incidence of this, I don't have any particular need to have an annual report in addition to the reports that you give when something does come up.
Because again, this is not about the incidents themselves. This is about reviewing the policy.
Right.
Right. So again, it's, we do the notice, we do the training. If we have any concerns or issues, we deal with them immediately. It's this idea that you're going to review this policy on an annual basis. That's why we had changed it.
Yeah, I'd just like to see anytime something like this comes up, we review the policy afterwards. And I think that fits with a report rather than an annual report. Thoughts?
I concur. I think that's smart.
I'm seeing more nods. Damien, you're not on my screen currently.
Oh, that's why I asked Dr. Mocha. Either way is fine by me.
Okay, so let's stick with a report on that, but otherwise get the other recommended changes. Okay. Again, we are only we're only engaging in discussion on items on the agenda. So I have dropped a couple of comments that came in on other topics. If you do have questions for the board or the superintendent on other topics, you can absolutely email us or bring them up at the next board meeting, September 22nd, I believe that is. Okay, the last item on our agenda before we adjourn the workshop and go into executive session is on the Pledge of Allegiance. There has been a request from a board member that with another agreeing that we should discuss whether or not to say the Pledge of Allegiance at the start of each board meeting. And I want to just start us off with a little history on the Pledge of Allegiance. So your forbearance here for just a moment. So I pledge allegiance to my flag and the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This original Pledge of Allegiance first gained widespread use in the lead up to Columbus Day, 1892, when Francis Bellamy crafted the pledge to salute flags given out as a subscription gimmick for a magazine he wrote for. He believed that capitalism, along with, quote, every alien immigrant of inferior race, end quote, eroded traditional values, and that pledging allegiance would ensure, quote, that the distinctive principles of true Americanism will not perish as long as free public education endures, end quote. I have citations for these quotes, by the way, if folks want them. Bellamy had considered adding equality and fraternity to the pledge to echo the famous words of the French Revolution, but thought that the state superintendents he would have to sell the idea to would be against equality for women and African Americans. He himself argued passionately for the need to define true Americanism in the face of immigration, saying, "We cannot be the dumping ground of Europe and bloom like a flower garden." He was talking about people of Slavic, Jewish, and Italian origin immigrating from Southern and Eastern Europe. With the approval of Congress and President Benjamin Harrison, the pledge was unveiled to celebrate Columbus Day, 1892, speaking of liberty and justice for all, while celebrating a man who led the enslavement, assault, and genocide of the Taino people of the Caribbean islands. In 1923, the words "my flag" were changed to "the flag of the United States" by the recommendation of the National Flag Conference to ensure that new immigrants would have no loyalty to their old nations. In 1954, the words "under God" were added by order of Congress and with President Dwight D. Eisenhower's enthusiastic approval in order to distinguish the United States from, quote, godless communism, end quote. The history of the pledge is nationalistic, nativistic, and xenophobic from its inception in 1892 until it took on its modern form in 1954. But the pledge is also aspirational, with liberty and justice for all. They are a reminder that the ideals of the United States of America is liberty and justice for every person within its borders, and that we can work toward that every day in every decision we make. In our district, the Pledge of Allegiance was eliminated from the agenda 10 or 11 years ago. It's not in the minutes because it was a choice of the board chair at that time, as setting the agenda is. So the discussion here is whether to bring the Pledge of Allegiance back onto the agenda or not. As board chair, I can certainly set the agenda as I choose, but I would like to get input from community members and the board and the leadership team as a whole. I'll start with board leadership team members if they have anything to say on this.
Well, first of all, Brooke, thank you for bringing this up. And I say that because I thought for sure there was a vote taken by the board. And when Dr. Mocha made the remark that there was no vote in the minutes, I felt that it was very important then to get an actual vote by the board on the record for many reasons. But we did take a vote on the land acknowledgement agreement, which of course I supported, and I also support the Pledge of Allegiance on many different aspirations. But and there can also have some good discussion in what you just read. I found things on the Smithsonian that I'm not going to sit here and read them because anybody can go read that that were very helpful on the other side a little bit to understand why the pledge is done. But basically, by Washington state law, that our students have the pledge every day in class, and they don't have to say it. And so therefore, I think that that's a good thing for the board to recognize as well, that nobody on the board or anybody in the room has to say it. But if the board chooses by vote, I hope, to acknowledge to have it or not, at least we're on the record as to where we stand. And if we do have it, then you don't have to participate. it's not a law that you have to participate. So I think that it has some significance, deep significance for a lot of people. And yes, granted, it was came out by Bellamy and everything else in his different agenda that he had, but it has transformed over the years to where I think it is a significant part of the country. And I don't want to have the kids or students be subjected to anything that we're not subjected to. So that's kind of where I'm at on the issue. There's probably more, but I didn't write down a whole script about it, but that's just talking from the cuff. So Smithsonian had some good arguments for it. And of course, I should say this too. One of the former Seattle school district principals did a nice article back in 10 years ago when the conversation was really heated up back then about the best thing to do is to have it because people don't have to participate, but it is part of our heritage, and it is part of us all being under one flag. So brings us, that's the one thing, I guess, as a country that brings us together. So there you have my 2 bits.
Well,
Thank you for your data, Brooke. I really appreciated those facts. That is, fantastic. And I have to say, I'd be interested in the Smithsonian links if you have them, Damien, because I'd love to read up about it from a different perspective. But the data that you shared, Brooke, was really important to me. I believe, just having been in classrooms my whole life as a student and then as a teacher, and then as a support person and human services support person, I know that pledge is a really important part of the student's day. And I also know that it's an important part for a lot of us who grew up saying the pledge. It was part of our childhood. It was part of who we were. As again, it was a kind of a placeholder. You always knew it was going to happen, right? So I came to this meeting with those thoughts in my head, that it's this ingrained concept and this ingrained construct in our culture for every student to have the opportunity to say that pledge. In the younger grades, it helps kids learn recitation. In the older grades, it can enhance a history class and speak to different types of patriotism and what that means. But after doing some of my own research about the data, and then Brooke reading your good information, I wasn't even thinking about it from that nationalist perspective and that xenophobic perspective. And that changes my thinkings a little bit, because I'm wondering, because yes, I absolutely agree with you, Damien, that people can choose to say it or not. They can choose to say parts of it or not, because I absolutely believe in the liberty and justice for all. But I struggle with other parts of the pledge personally. And so I make choices based on, what group I'm with. I make choices based on, my own personal beliefs. And that's absolutely okay. And I'm glad I have that right. And I'm glad I have that privilege. And so I'm very torn, I have to be honest, because I think that it's a good thing to do from the perspective of it being part of our culture, our heritage, but with all the understanding I'm always gaining and learning from listening and hearing and seeing what harm words can create and what harm language can create. I'm torn, because to do it just to do it because that's what we've always done may not be the right answer. So I don't have an answer yet. I want to hear about what more other board members have to say and what our community has to say about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to hear from students and about how they feel about saying the pledge in school every day, because they confirmed that happens. We had a bunch of high schoolers last meeting. They confirmed, yep, we say the pledge. It happens every day. But we didn't really get to hear their feelings about it. So I'd love to hear from our student body. I was looking at our students for guidance. How do they feel about doing that every day? And how do they feel about that being part of their, sort of in school culture and tradition?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Anne, and thank you, Damien. I too would be interested in reading those Smithsonian links that you referenced. I also have done some research into the history of the pledge, both in preparation for this meeting and in times past. And I too am troubled with its racist roots, its xenophobic and nationalistic roots. I also believe that the 1954 decision to add the words "under God" does call into question the separation of church and state that that a public institution should be attentive to. And yet, I also share the philosophy that there are really noble aspirations that are named in the pledge, and that we should be striving for a union in which liberty and justice for all are centered and called to our attention as frequently as possible. So I appreciate the more nuanced discussion. I think that I hope that our students are being given opportunities to have such nuanced discussions about a tradition that they are learning and participating in, or in the words that Damien used, being subjected to. We shouldn't subject students to anything we can't subject ourselves to, I believe were your words. So I guess I would like to say that, yes, it's great to be able to use this as an opportunity to learn more about this tradition that we have all grown up in. And I'll also question whether our children are being invited to these nuanced discussions about this tradition, both its challenges and its beauty.
I would also add that there's been many cases brought to the Supreme Court level regarding the Pledge of Allegiance. And I think it's important to know what the Supreme Court has ruled in those decisions as well over the years. So I might as well send you some of those links too, because it's a great conversation. But like I said, I think more importantly than anything else, it wasn't voted on before. And if it's a school district policy not to say it, then I think it should be voted upon one way or the other. That people, put their name to it, for or against. That's kind of where I'm at on this deal.
So I thank you all for weighing in. I also wanted to note that I really have not appreciated the use of the pledge as a disruptive tool in our in-person meetings. I felt that was disrespectful not only to the board, but also to the pledge, because it has a purpose, it has a meaning, it is affirming loyalty to a nation. And I think using that as a disruptive tool for an educational board is eminently disrespectful to the pledge itself. So I just wanted to note that I'm very disappointed that tactic was used at these last two meetings. And yeah, just wanted to put that out there, that I have not been pleased with that. And it is actually, to be honest, it's colored my look at the pledge, because it's being used as a tool of intimidation and disruption. And I don't want to see it used that way. It's, as Anne was saying, it's spoken in the children's classrooms every day. They hear it more than 2,000 times in their school career. That shouldn't be used as a weapon for political gain. That should be something that is a student or an adult's choice, whether or not they say it, but it should be used to reaffirm and to aspire, in my opinion. Yeah. I do have a note from Andrea on this. She sent me an email when she was asking to for that excused absence to also note this. And it said, her words are, "In regards to the Pledge of Allegiance conversation, I would recommend that the decision be moved to a district committee that can explore both sides of the conversation and report back to us at a later date. As a military spouse, I'm frustrated by the use of our pledge as a distraction and disruption tactic, and would like any conversation or practice regarding saying the Pledge of Allegiance to convey the respect our service members deserve." As a note, we are in a board workshop. There was a question from a community member about whether or not we would be voting on this tonight. We will not be doing that tonight. We cannot take specific action at a board workshop to put something into policy unless it's an emergency. That's why we had the special business meeting at the start of this. So we can decide what we want to do with this Dr. Moshe.
I just, having been here actually as a member of this leadership team the longest, other than Dan Pullman, I do wonder why now the pledge is, and to quote or to sort of subquote Brooke, it's kind of been weaponized against this board. It's never been raised as an issue in 10 plus years, ever, by any board member. It simply was no longer said. And so I just wonder why now? Why in this environment? So that's just food for thought. I work for the board. The pledge is the pledge, and I've said it all my life. That is not the issue. The issue is, why is it being used as a weapon? That's my concern.
Well, I'd have to kind of disagree with you, Dr. Mocha, because like I said, I thought it was something that was voted upon, and which is why I never said anything about it in 10 years. But now that I know it wasn't voted upon, then it is something I believe that needs to be voted upon. And I don't think it's necessarily been weaponized. I just think people didn't know that we didn't say it. I think people have shown up and been caught off guard. And,
Damien?
The land acknowledgement is another thing that has caught people off guard. They didn't know that either. So some things we do need to do to educate people. And I don't think it's being used as a weapon or a tool. That would be like saying, is the land acknowledgement being used as a tool? I don't believe that.
I don't think so, Damien, at all, because the board spoke about the land acknowledgement several times and then took a vote on it. In terms of the pledge,
And it was actually sent to a committee.
yeah, and it was sent to a committee to work on. And in terms of the pledge, yeah, I guess I just look at it and think everyone has been at these board meetings time and time again. And so it was never raised, and then it was used by community members to disrupt the board's agenda. I mean, that's a fact. That's not me making an opinion. It was not on the agenda, and it was used to disrupt the agenda on multiple occasions. And so it's and I'll use my own words, it did become a tool or a weapon. And so I guess if we could just at least be acknowledge that's true, and whether the board decides to open its meetings with a pledge or not, it's up to this board, and we'll all follow what the board does. But the board sets its agenda. Board members have input into that agenda, and they know that the leadership of the board meets weekly with the superintendent. It could have been raised by board members many times, and it never was, not one time. So boards of education in this district have looked at previous board votes and previous board policies. You did it tonight, policies that are in place, and have changed those policies or practices. So whether or not it was a vote 11 years ago, again, it wasn't even mentioned for the last 11 years. So,
Well, it's not even been 10 years. It'll be 10 years in December, but still, if there's no vote on record in the minutes, that's kind of where I'm standing. I think it's a good thing to address. And if it needs to be a policy, then maybe that needs to be addressed too, or policy for or against. Maybe that's why the committee needs to be involved. But sometimes we
happy
need
to put a committee together for the board on this.
Well, and Damien, I want to back up Dr. Moshe on this also. The Pledge of Allegiance was absolutely used as a tool of disruption at our past two in-person meetings. It was used to disrupt our agenda, interrupt and disrupt our agenda. That, as Dr. Moshe said, that's not an opinion. That's a fact. It was not on the agenda. It was done impromptu, out of turn by audience members. That's a simple fact. Any other comments from the board? We have a number of comments from the community that I do want to get to, but
I'm certainly open to a committee doing some discovery work. I think that's okay. I absolutely concur, Brooke, with you and with Joe. Thank you very much for bringing that up, that was a distraction and a disruption, and a very specific disruption. and it was unfortunate. And so thank you for bringing that up. I had another thought and it went away. So let's hear from the community.
Yeah, I would agree. I would like to hear from the community, and I would like to fourth the remarks about an intentional planned disruption that weaponized the pledge against our orders of business.
Okay, Irene Vernon Langley. Actually, this is going back to COVID stuff. Board members can read it. It's words of thanks and support in regards to our COVID actions. Gwendy Hastings, Freeland. The board should lead by example and say the pledge at the meeting, just like the students do every day. If we are acknowledging the land we are on, we need to acknowledge the flag by saying the pledge. With that said, like Damien said, people are free to participate or not participate. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to go through a lot of these. We absolutely want to hear your opinion. If it's just an opinion that you have here, I'm just going to acknowledge it and thank you for it and move on. Melissa Wood, Langley. Thank you all for the thoughtful consideration of reciting the Pledge of Allegiance at board meetings. I'm grateful for your patient and thorough determination to address the issues brought up by the community. Ed Coleman, Greenbank. As a retired school teacher, I'd like to comment on the pledge. At the start of class every morning, announcements would be made over the intercom and the pledge would be recited. During the first week of school, as a class, we would review the basic rules of the class, what was expected of each student, and basic housekeeping in our class. Surprisingly, in high school, many students would forget basic housekeeping and leave scrap paper, gum wrappers, etc., and not dispose of the items appropriately. While going over the fundamentals of the class operation, I'd inform students that announcement time was important in keeping up to date on school activities and such. Being that announcements were important, I expected students to remain silent and in their seats. I did explain that the pledge was part of the announcements and that some students might want to stand and face the flag during the pledge. However, standing and reciting the pledge was strictly optional, although if a student did not want to recite the pledge, they were to be respectful of their classmates and remain silent. Occasionally, this would be a point of discussion with the students. When discussing the choice to recite the pledge or not, oftentimes students would ask why they quote unquote had to recite it. This would invariably come down to a mini history lesson on the origin of the pledge and its author, Francis Bellamy, a former Baptist minister, nativist, Christian socialist, and racist. That said, I see no reason why the Pledge of Allegiance should be required for students to recite. To save time, I will cite some links for the school board and interested parties so they can read and come to their own conclusions about the pledge. He's got 2 links here, including actually 2 of the ones that I used for my research. So that's great. I won't have to share those because they'll be here in this comment. I do want to note that it is absolutely students' choice whether or not to recite the pledge based on Washington state law. Malcolm Cumming, Clinton. What about some wording change to the pledge? Quote, I pledge allegiance to the people of the United States of America and to our democracy for which we stand, one nation on this earth, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, end quote. Charlene Davenport, Clinton. Thank you, Brooke, for the background info on the pledge. According to the state statute, there is no requirement for the pledge to be said at a school board workshop or meeting. Thank you, school board members, for all of your comments during the discussion period.
Brooke, we should answer Malcolm's question, and that question is that it's codified in law at the federal government as well as at the state level too, under our CW, as to the words of the pledge.
Yes, the Pledge of Allegiance is codified in flag code. Thank you, Damien. Amanda Fisher, Langley. Very proud of this board. Your honest discussion of difficult topics impresses me. I'm so glad you are in these leadership positions. Thank you. Candace Tkachuk, and I live in Greenbank. Thank you so much for sharing about the history of the pledge. My vote is to not add it to the standard board procedure because it is clear to me that it is a piece of rhetoric that is inspired by exclusion, xenophobia, and a standard of Americanness based on white cultural dominance. If people want to lift up the ideals of liberty and justice, perhaps there are other ways to do this. Margaret King, Clinton. Is the land acknowledgement a tool same as you are claiming the pledge? We're not claiming that the pledge itself is a tool of disruption here. I think that's what you're referring to. just the manner in which it was used. And the land acknowledgement was sent through a committee, which is what has been proposed here, and then voted upon by the board, which would theoretically be the end result of discussion in the committee. Anne Linnea Freeland. I appreciate the background on the Pledge of Allegiance given by the board chair and the conversation from all board members. Quote, using the Pledge of Allegiance as a disruptive tool of intimidation, end quote, is a poor practice. Sending this issue to a committee for a recommendation to be brought back to the board is a good idea so that the board can move on to its business. Maureen Green, Clinton. Why is the land acknowledgement now a tool? Since when do we have to have a reason as to why and when we woke up to your agenda? Maureen Green, Clinton. I think that is less important about why it's coming up now than to have the conversation, which is why I think that a committee is such a good idea personally. Kathy Ireland, Freeland. Thank you, Brooke, for your thoughts on the pledge being used as an intimidation disruption tactic. That is how I felt when that happened at the board meeting. I believe if our district is purposefully moving forward with policies for equity, it would be a step backward to make a new policy to recite a pledge with racist and xenophobic roots. Stephanie Hammer, my apologies, Stephanie, from Coopville. Thank you, Marnie, for bringing up the question of church and state. My mother, who was a staunch political conservative, was angered at and concerned by the 1954 edition, and she refused to say the words, quote, under God, end quote, because she considered this an invasion of her privacy and confused the secular with the religious in ways that she found worrisome and unconstitutional. I should note that this has, as Damien mentioned, this has come up before the Supreme Court on multiple occasions, 2 occasions, I believe, and it has been, maybe one was a state and one was a federal Supreme Court, but it was noted that it was a ceremonial use rather than a religious one in the leading opinion. Vincent Natras, Langley. The pledge has always been a fraught political wedge. I am the son of a World War II veteran, and I've never felt it necessary to recite a rote pledge. As an atheist, I have always felt the pledge is coercive in demanding my participation in not only a nationalist pledge, but in a religious pledge as well. My question is this: is the purpose of South Woodbury School District to educate our youth to be informed enough to think for themselves? I would say that yes, that's very much part of our mission, vision, and goals statements. Kristen from Clinton, mom of 3 South Woodbury School students. The pledge is a distraction. If you have something important to say, just say it. Larry Christensen, Freeland. How many sitting directors at this time think the Pledge of Allegiance was honestly used as a weapon and should be considered an interruption in future meetings? Please have each director answer yes or no roll call responses. Thank you. We do not do roll call responses during a board workshop. This is a time for discussion, not specific roll calls. I will note that my statement was that the use of it to interrupt our agenda was a weapon. I do not necessarily consider, let me be more clear on that. If it is on the agenda, I absolutely do not think it is being used as an interruption or a weapon in that case. Sarah McDougall, Freeland. Sorry, if any of the board members, leadership team as a whole want to chime in at any point, please do. I'm moving through these quickly because we have a lot of them and they keep coming in, but please, if anyone wants to chime in, just speak up and interrupt me because I can't see your faces with the Q&A screen open. Sarah McDougall, Freeland. I agree with Brooke that the use of the pledge as a disruptive tool is disrespectful. Also, the timing of why now is important. This kind of disruption is happening all over the country. If a committee to work through this takes time away from focusing on our students' education, then it is not productive. Joan Green, Langley, parent of a South Woodbury High School student. My daughter is a junior and we recently moved here from San Diego. She has been at progressive project-based school since kindergarten and has never said the pledge until her first day at South Woodbury High School a week last week. I wish that the pledge was written in a way that respected all human beings. Since that was not the case, we as a nation need to rewrite it for current times. But since that's not the case, I suggest we stop saying it in South Woodbury classrooms as well as school board meetings. Instead, let's start saying the land acknowledgements in both the school board meetings and in the classrooms as a way to start respecting the true history of this nation. I will note that it is state law to provide the opportunity for students to recite the Pledge of Allegiance at the start during the school day. So that's something beyond our purview at this point, the use in these schools. Although how it is used in the schools could be something that the committee discusses if we choose to send it to committee. I've got a couple of comments here. Julie May Pygott, I don't know where you're from. If you could note that somewhere, I will certainly read your comment. Sharon Emerson Langley, whether the pledge has been used as a weapon and has had racist origins is irrelevant, I think. While it may be frustrating, that shouldn't inform the decision. Since it seems to be so important to a significant segment, why not let it be said? I'm not in love with the under God part. The rest of it is fine. Gwendy Hastings Freeland, the words weaponized pledge is heartbreaking. I understand your frustration about recent meetings. With that said, why allow the behaviors of a few people prevent us from refocusing our attention on the flag that represents so many lives lost, unselfish sacrifice, and historical importance? We are now not having an in-person meeting because of the actions of a few. If we run from the behaviors of others, those behaving that way will only continue to behave this way. We must be firm in what we stand for and lead our students by our examples. Irene, I've got a comment here from you, but not a last name or a location. If you send those in, I will absolutely read them. Julie May Pygott is from Clinton. The issue of weaponizing the Pledge of Allegiance in a school board meeting forum is disrespectful. I see no need to have a formal vote on whether the pledge is used in standard board procedure. Members can say it on their own if they feel called. Let's see here. Amanda Murphy, Clinton. I would add that the pledge has also been used as an intimidation tactic in the last several in-person meetings very clearly. I believe it's another weapon people have been using to divide our district rather than unite us. It doesn't make sense to add it to board meetings, and especially if part of the reasoning is that our schools do it, why shouldn't the board? Perhaps we should consider eliminating it from the schools based on its racist and xenophobic roots. Again, based on Washington state law, we cannot eliminate it from the schools. Kristen, the mom of 3, whose location I forget at the moment, I agree with the San Diego parent suggestion, modernize. Amanda Fisher, Langley, don't take time on the pledge. There is so much work to do, important work around student learning, health, and safety. Keep the focus. Irene, sorry about that. That's my phone going off. Irene Vernon Langley, thank you for your attention on this important matter. I do not see a need for the Pledge of Allegiance for a number of reasons, but it is also an archaic way to build unity. We need to create new ways to build equity, justice, and liberty for all. Just a moment, real quick. Sorry, my daughter is with her grandfather, and that call was just from her his phone. So I think that she's calling to say goodnight to me and my wife. So I'm going to make sure that she takes that since I'm here with you all. Katrina Morse, Freeland. I find it strange and disturbing that the pledge was used as a tool of disruption by participants at recent board meetings. I am not in favor of the board reciting the pledge. It strikes me as performative and unnecessary. That is the comments from the community that we have currently. I'd love to hear from other board members if anything in there stuck out to you in particular, or if you have, based on what we've heard from the community, if you have any further thoughts on what you'd like us to do about this.
It did strike me as people were talking or chatting that, you know, I've served on many boards and facilitated boards and observed boards. I don't believe I've ever been on a board, particularly, that does say the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't think it's a standard agenda item, but I could be wrong. I haven't done my research on that. That's anecdotal in my head. But I don't know that there is a standard of procedure for boards. And if you looked at a kind of generalized bylaws perspective, I don't know if that's standard procedure. Second of all, I really appreciate the community comments because I heard some really specific things. One of them being, let's stick to stuff that's student-centered. And is this really a student-centered issue? And second of all, you know, let's continue looking at those facts and that data and see whether or not we are harming if we add the pledge to our agenda. Are we just doing performative work to appease a certain population? Or are we actually wholeheartedly looking at this issue as a holistic need for our community. So those are my thoughts.
Thanks, Anne. One thing I heard from community that I want to speak to is just this question around why do we have students say the pledge in our schools, and the answer that it is required by state law. And it actually makes me curious around whether by putting this matter to discussion in a committee, we might actually get some student opinions on how that tradition feels for students, how it impacts their education, how it helps them feel ready for their day of learning. And frankly, if we were to learn that there were profound impacts on students because of the presence of the pledge in our schools, either positively or negatively, it might impact, for one thing, how we liaise with our legislative representatives in terms of recommending policy that moves upward, much in the way that we recommend WASDA to take a look at our policy improvements. We might recommend to our elected officials that they take real evidence from students in public schools to heart as they think about what is state law and how is it shaped to remain relevant for this and future generations.
Thank you both for that. I want to particularly note, Marnie, I completely agree with you that I think that a committee would be a much better way for students to put their voice in on this. I know it can be very daunting to have your name and words read up in front of, we're at 79 attendees besides those of us on the panel here. So I think it would be great if we could find a way to get more student voice in a safer, more comfortable manner. Dr. Moshe or Damien, we've got a few more comments, but I want to give everyone the opportunity to speak.
Well, actually, Gwendy's saying something I was going to say as well after Anne made her comments, but I'll let you give the credit to Gwendy there so you can read them.
Dr. Moshe, anything?
My only comment to the board is that, all of these conversations are really important, and the board's work is critical to the ability of the district to move forward. And so again, your time, the time for the staff and superintendent, all of that is limited, right, by constraints of all the work we have to do. So we just need to choose wisely as to where we put our efforts and our time. And so that would be my only caution is, there's a lot of things on the agenda. And the board really needs to be able to do the board's business when it meets in public.
Okay, I've got 3 more comments here. Aaron Wilkie, Freeland. Is the pledge to the land a part of the regular board meeting? The land acknowledgement is part of the regular board meeting. It was sent to committee to determine whether or not we should do one and how we should do it, and then voted on by the board. It is not a pledge, however. It is simply an acknowledgement of where we are located and who came before us here. Sharon Emerson Langley, listening to these comments, I'm starting to feel pro-pledge. Let's pledge to be undivided, us adults, really. Gwendy Hastings, Freeland, the Port of South Whidbey does, Island County does, and other public entities say the pledge at the start of meetings. Main word is public entities. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's good to see the difference between private boards and public entities.
And to follow up on that, of course, our United States Senate does, and our United States House of Representatives says it as well. So I think it's important to note those issues are said from the school board level on up, even including the port and the county and state and federal government. So like I said, I thought it was voted down, but it wasn't. So thank you for at least bringing some attention back to it.
I think these conversations are really valuable to have. I do want to recognize the time constraints that they add to everyone's lives, but I think that having these conversations allows us to educate ourselves and also to be educated by those around us, and to share that education with those around us as well. And I think that, I mean, what better thing for us to do than be educated and to educate as members of a school board. So being that we can't take action at a board workshop, I'd like to suggest that we refer this to committee, that we pass this off to a committee to discuss the ramifications on students, on what we would be saying ourselves within, by putting it on the agenda, whether we think that it's aspirational or mired in history or whatever, to try to get some more discussion on that and then bring it back up at a later date.
May I ask, the demands on the time of our administration and staff to assemble a committee? Joe, Dr. Moshe, can I just hear your brief reflections on whether there's capacity for doing that assembly work right now?
I would suggest that we have to look at the board's 3 goals. And one of those 3 goals right now is that we do have conversation, restorative conversations. And I've met with several members of the community and was planning to put together a committee to strategize how to do that work. We are working on transformative leadership and plan with the administrators to take on that work. And we are also looking at ways to improve student learning. And so staff is working on that. We have, teacher early release days, and every week they are working toward that end. So the long answer to your question is, if this is a priority for the board to do now, then I will make room to handle that priority. It would be my preference that we move this forward to, I would suggest, early in the new year. But if the board wants me to move more quickly than that, then that would be the board's priority, and I will move more quickly than that.
Thank you. Much as we did with our technology acquisition decisions, I remember, perhaps it was that decision, I remember a decision to ask the superintendent to schedule it several months out to allow time for the pressing needs at that time, which were around serving students directly. And in this same case, I would suggest this might be a matter where the formulation of a committee is not as time sensitive as onboarding our students at the start of the school year.
I concur. I think that's a good use of time and resources.
Okay, so it sounds like pushing things off a little bit, but keeping this in our minds, building the committee as we have capacity. We do have a few more comments from, go ahead.
I was just going to say we have, and there's a comment that you'll get to, but we do have standing committees. We have an equity committee. We certainly could, use the expertise of that committee. But again, every committee we have has standing work that it wants to accomplish. So again, I think we have the means to do it. I just think we need, we have other things that are in the priority hopper right now.
Okay, I'm going to read a couple more of these committee comments. Deborah Dix Clinton. While I don't feel the pledge is necessary at board meetings, I do appreciate the thoughtfulness and consideration shown this issue among the board members here. Learning the history of the pledge is also interesting. Thank you. I like to have my research appreciated. Bonnie Arndt Langley. I feel that this issue being prompted by the disruptive use of the pledge is a bad motivator. I think it would be best to table this for now. It could be rediscussed in the future with other motivators. Tina Goodrich, Langley. I appreciate Brooke's historical perspective regarding the Pledge of Allegiance. My question is, have the students at Southbury High School given this history so they can decide if this is something they want to participate in? Thank you. I don't know if there is a particular discussion of this or what in classes after the first announcement, or what grade level it would be appropriate at. I would leave that up to the experts, the educators. Nicole Midkiff, Clinton. I believe the Board of Five should be strong enough to make this decision among themselves without straining the resources of others. John Macaro, I don't have a look. There we go. Thank you. John Macaro, Clinton. Don't waste the staff's time. My wife works for the district and does about 3 different jobs. It's a waste of resources. This is ridiculous. FYI, I don't care either way about the pledge. Don't have it, have it. This is not the place to educate yourselves. Read a book, not Wikipedia. Kristen, the mother of several students, notes, my student, a sophomore, chose not to participate in the pledge. She's in Clinton. So it sounds like, sorry, let me go to this first. Thank you all to the community members. I know that all of the board members really appreciate hearing the various opinions out there and getting further points of view on this. There's been a lot of things that have come up that I hadn't considered yet, that I think it's been very valuable for me, and I'm seeing head nods also, which is wonderful. This is why I love workshops. And I will continue beating that drum as long as we have them, which is fantastic. So it sounds to me like this is something that as soon as we have staff resources to lead a committee, we'll get one together to discuss this and figure out how to get a good recommendation to the board or thorough look at the topic from all sides possible, including within the district and the community. Yes?
It could actually, you know, as I sit here and think about this, it could actually be, and I don't want to frighten any of our young people away from applying for a seat on the board, but it could be an opportunity for a student board member to take the lead on with support from myself and from some other staff. It could be a real learning opportunity. So I think we can certainly move this forward in the future.
I think if we do that, I think it's a fantastic idea, but I think we should be sure to have a elected board member there as backup for the.
Oh, totally. Yeah, a board member or two can be part of the committee. I just think, you know, having a student take the lead on it might be something of a learning opportunity.
Yep, I agree. Okay.
I would definitely support that, and I would be one of those people who would be willing to work on committee for that. I think it's really important to have the student voices and have, you know, that student-centered work be done so that we're meeting the goals that we set for ourselves too.
Mm-hmm. Okay, if there is no further discussion on this topic, I also want to say thank you to the community, because those comments came in were constructive, concise, and well within the bounds that we've established for comments here. So thank you very much. We've had some discussions that's not been the case, and we've had to just dismiss out of hand a large number of comments that were not appropriate. And so thank you very much for participating in such a community-minded manner. I will now adjourn this board workshop and move the board to executive session for no longer than 45 minutes to discuss ongoing negotiations. Meeting adjourned. Thank you and good night.